Howdy, howdy, howdy. My name's Anashi Sasuke, and finally, welcome back to reading 001. Uh, last week, the website had just started working again, but I was on the back rooms kick. But now I'm back in here, so we're gonna finally check out what the 12th Overseer has to say. Open file 2. Previous name unknown, African male. Appears to be in his 40s, well-known figure in financial markets, though rarely spoken of publicly if ever. Dresses in expensive tailored clothing with similarly expensive jewelry. Wears dark glasses. Apparent mathematical genius, supposedly capable of running the calculations for probability itself in his mind. Likely anomalous influence. Maintains Foundation financial accounts. Manipulates trade markets in order to accrue wealth for the Foundation and, by extension, himself. Supposedly has members of his own staff seated at high-level positions on financial boards for all major world governments. So let's check out that there access log. Chapter 2, Futures Trading. Elsewhere. In a room devoid of light or sound, a man sat at his desk and read. There was a time when the darkness would have impeded him, but that time had passed. Now he found it comforting. Colors distracted him from his work. He turned to the next page of the report, despite not needing to see the words to read them. Old habits, he supposed. With each successive sentence, his calm gave way to cold, calculated purpose. The door opened. A blade of light pierced the room, illuminating the man in his desk. It cut across his forearm and highlighted an old burn scar. He instinctively moved his hand to cover it. He looked up. A woman stood at the doorway, hesitating. It was only then that he realized his face was twisted with rage. He forced himself to relax, acknowledged her with a nod, and motioned her in. She took 2 steps forward and spoke. "You've heard?" "Yes," he closed the report. "Do we know who yet?" "Not yet." She moved to approach but stopped, as if a wind forced her back. "Whoever found the pinnacle did so with the use of mnestics, and there's a limited supply. We're looking." "And the contract?" The woman didn't respond. "Felix?" "We didn't find him. If he fell or was pushed, he might still be falling. We have to assume the worst." The man stood, his eyes fixed on the backs of his own knuckles. "I don't understand how this could happen. I don't understand who would do this. Who could do this? Do they even know what they did?" He looked up at her. "This is bad." Her expression did not change. "The rest of the council has been alerted. I just came here to make sure you knew." She took another step forward. Her hand fell to his desk. Maybe if we just... "Whatever you were about to say, don't." His voice was flat. Something trembled just under the surface. "Whoever they are, they got lucky." She frowned. He could see the weariness in her face. There was something she wanted to tell him. There was something she wanted to say. Instead, she just closed her eyes and nodded. He reached for her hand upon the desk, taking it into his own. His palm was worn, scraped leather. Hers was ice. "I know you're tired. I know. God, I know. He forced himself to stop. He took a breath, turned her hand over, and traced the scars along her wrist and forearm. She looked so frail now. "We can't stop now. We can't give up now." Her eyes were still closed. "I know." "Go, now. Go back to the garden. You know the way in. You'll be safe there. I'm going to call up the task forces and we'll figure out what this is. I'll call you when it's clear." She squeezed his hand back. At last her eyes opened. "What about you?" He smiled. "I just need to figure some things out and I'll come for you." He came around the desk and held her. She held him back. After a few moments of silence, she turned her head up to his. The phone rang. He grimaced. His grip on her loosened. "I'm sorry, Her expression hardened. She released him, nodding. "I know." Without another word, she turned and left him alone. He reached for the phone. Now. I don't remember the voices I gave to these people. "The Accountant." Anthony found the title amusing. "Do they only have one?" "That's a lot of math. He must be some sort of uber nerd." "A dire nerd," Adam offered, his eyes never leaving the screen on his laptop. This comment drew blank stares from Olivia, Anthony, and Calvin. "You know, like a dire wolf from D&D or Game of Thrones or..." Adam looked up. He immediately scowled and went right back to typing. "Fuck, you people are old." Anthony took a drag of his cigarette and eyed Calvin from across the room. Alright, so, how are you planning on finding all these fucks? I doubt they're just hanging out at the local pub. They're probably holed up somewhere with enough anomalous ordnance to make Mordor look like the Shire. He gave Adam a look who, without raising his head, lifted two fingers in appreciation. Calvin nodded. Yeah, this is where it gets tricky. Our mystery agent wrote a lot about the overseers and a little bit about where they live or where they'd be hiding, but a lot of it is situational and might not be helpful. That's why we're going after the accountant first. He's the one who pays the rent. Take him out, and the list of possible safe houses gets that much smaller. Olivia leaned back in her chair. Perfect! We just need to find this first one then. The first one of these gods on Earth that know we're coming for them. Do you even have a plan? Calvin gestured to his right. I've got Adam. Adam leaned away from his computer. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I can find him. This'll be good. Adam ignored him. The accountant is, as far as we can tell, a mathematical prodigy who specializes in statistical analysis. He's a data sponge. He soaks up information and analyzes it and finds hidden correlations no one else can see. Everything he does based on these invisible relationships, his entire route. What he wears, what he drinks, his day-to-day activities, they're all based on predictions derived from these correlations. He turned the screen around to show the others. Several tabs were open in his browser. The current one was a graph of current stock prices. Now, I probably don't need to tell you what a person like this could do in stock markets. He analyzes data faster than computers. He can predict the boom and bust of a Fortune 500 based on a goddamn train schedule. And, although his ability to see these correlations is anomalous, the correlations themselves aren't. They're just impossible enough for anyone else to understand or decode. Alright, Anthony said, but that doesn't tell us how to... Train schedules, Olivia cut him off. She was focused on one of the unopened tabs on the screen. In Tokyo? Adam grinned and nodded. He opened the tab, revealing a translated train schedule. The journal mentioned it. I've been having Alexander crunching numbers for a few weeks. Alexander? Anthony narrowed his eyes. It's the name he gave his laptop, Calvin replied. What did you find? Basically, there's some sort of weird correlation between international housing markets and train schedules printed in Tokyo on the 5th day of every 3rd month, Adam said. And based on how deliberate this guy is, I'd be willing to bet money he goes to Tokyo himself to examine those schedules the day they're printed. Hang on, Olivia leaned in to examine the screen closer. You said this guy is able to make predictions based on correlations no one else can see, right? Wouldn't that lead him to realize he shouldn't be where we expect him to be? Adam cocked his head. Are you asking me if he can see into the future? Well, yeah. Isn't that basically what this is? Olivia turned from the screen and focused her attention on Adam. If he's able to magically see connections no one else can, isn't it possible some piece of information he's encountered will tell him that we're coming? Or even who we are? I don't think so, Calvin said. I mean, the numbers can be wrong. Adam shook his head. No, she's... well, mostly right. The numbers can't be wrong. They're just data. He can't know anything for sure, though. He just makes predictions, and those predictions have varying degrees of certainty. That's the hiccup here. He can know there's a 75% chance that today, someone will attack him. He can know there's a 30% chance it'll be 5 people, a 25% chance it'll be 4 people, a 20% chance it'll be 3 people, so on. Anthony massaged his brows. Look, do we really need to take a probabilities course to kill this guy? I get that he's smart, but last time I checked, train schedules don't stop bullets. But bullets won't stop someone who isn't even there, Olivia replied. She turned back to Adam. So basically, he can predict extremely complex systems based on seemingly random bits of data, right? Right. Olivia gave them all a very crooked grin. In that case, I think I know exactly how to beat him. What are they going to do? Rig the lottery? What do you want me to do? Dress and drag and do the hula? No, but the black car pulled to the side of a street in the Tokyo financial district. The man who stepped out was so extraordinarily unremarkable that, under normal circumstances, even his lack of remarkability failed to generate a remark. Sorry, yawning. His high-end tailored suit and dark glasses blended with the well-to-dos of the region. His skin was a shade of amber gold. Despite being aware of the time, he checked his wristwatch, closed the car door, then took 3 steps down the sidewalk. The vehicle drove away. The accountant was a man of precision. He slept for exactly 7 hours. When he woke, it was on the hour. Each footfall was calculated, each step predetermined. He made no mistakes, took no chances, and accounted for every significant possibility. That's why, when he first noticed the young man approaching him from across the street, he took immediate action. The man was in his 20s, short hair, open coat, Slavic if he had to wager a guess. Based on the color of the man's shoes, the accountant determined he was here to kill him. Based on the current market price of peaches, the accountant determined that he was not alone. What? He took a step to the left. A crowd of businessmen had just emerged from a nearby diner. This put at least 15 people between him and the would-be assassin. One of the 15 was Japanese, in his mid-50s. He walked with a slight limp and was going bald. This meant the second assassin was in the third-story window of the small wine shop across the street. Are you kidding me? The accountant adjusted his watch, reflecting sunlight off its surface and into the window. The sniper was briefly blinded. Now that neither assassin could see him, he moved to enter a nearby office building. Fuck! Glare! Anthony growled into his mic. You see him? Adam fought his way through the crowd, shaking his head. No, lost him. He's anticipating everything we're doing. I think he's got to be in that building with the blue glass. He's heading for it. Olivia peeked from around the corner and touched her earpiece. Calvin, should I go in with him? There was a brief pause before Calvin replied, yes. Olivia jogged towards the financial district. Adam pushed his way through several more people to follow her. The interior was a sprawling 3-story lobby framed with marble. A grand staircase extended up to each level, with glass elevators providing an alternate route. Adam's eyes darted between the various levels. Which level? She yanked Adam by the arm and pulled. Neither. This way. The two of them took off towards the far end of the building. An emergency exit led to an alleyway out back. Olivia shoved the door open and stepped through. Adam followed. As soon as they stepped outside, they were greeted with the sound of muffled gunfire. Shit! Olivia pulled Adam between two dumpsters. Soon she followed him, dropping to a crouch. She flipped out her compact mirror and held it out, using the reflection to search the alley ahead. 2 men in suits stood where the alley emptied out into the street. Between them, the accountant checked his watch. This'll work, he announced. We've got about a minute before I leave to catch my train, so what can I do for you? Olivia examined the reflection in her mirror. Adam squinted at the image, frowning. He's just standing out in the open, he whispered. We could just... She reached to touch her earpiece again. Calvin, do we go for it? Calvin's reply came almost immediately. No. Olivia looked at Adam. Keep him talking. Oh, he's talking to them? Or, okay, no. Adam nodded. He turned to the side of the dumpster and hollered, You're the accountant, right? You know, I do have a professional title and a name if you'd rather. We know who you are, Adam yelled back. We're here to kill you. Yes, I am aware. Well, here I am. Go ahead. Take a shot. Olivia gestured for Adam to keep going. But do you know why we're here to kill you? 29 seconds. You're very likely the ones I received word about just this morning. You're responsible for terminating our contract with death. I presume you want to murder me over some sort of ideological quibble. An ideological quibble? Adam's voice nearly hitched up an octave. Olivia reached to touch his shoulder. You know how many corpses your organization is built on top of? How many people die every day just so you fucks get to run the show? I've never killed anyone. Of course, I'm certain you've killed a few. How many? A dozen? 100? Did you bother to learn any of their names? The accountant asked. He checked his watch again. Were any of them children? Just curious. Adam jerked against Olivia's grip. She squeezed him hard. Don't, she whispered. He's trying to get a rise out of you. Fuck him, Adam growled. His grip on his pistol was tight enough to force the blood out of his knuckles. Like he hasn't killed. Well, if you're going to try to murder me, I suppose I'll just... Well, if you're not going to try and murder me, I suppose I'll just have to leave early, the accountant said. Again, he looked at his watch. 7 seconds. We're going to miss our chance, Adam hissed. No, Calvin said... Adam was already lunging to his feet and Olivia was lunging to tackle him. Her arms slammed into his legs, forcing him to buckle, and the next instant a deafening pop rushed to fill the alleyway. A fist-sized crater appeared in the dumpster behind them, right where Adam's head had been. Wisps of smoke swirled up from the hole. Adam and Olivia both stared at it, their backs pressed against the other dumpster. Shit, Adam whispered. Sniper, Olivia replied. One, the accountant pronounced. Everyone down. Several more pops echoed through the street, accompanied by distant screams. Olivia and Adam caught the sound of glass shattering. The popping sounds were followed by additional gunfire. Anthony's voice boomed over the earpiece. I'm covering you! Go! Olivia and Adam ran for the door. In the distance, they could hear the sirens, along with the squealing of rubber of the accountant's car as it drove away. Sometimes the accountant wondered what it was like to live in uncertainty, to exist in a world where you could not predict the most likely outcome based on the data in front of you. He imagined it was a dreadful, unbearable state, like being trapped in a nightmare, where nothing made any sense. The thought often prompted a feeling of tremendous pity. He felt no pity at this moment. As he approached the boarding station, he checked his watch and revisited the alleyway in his mind. He had replayed the events that unfolded there 23 times. Each time, none of it made sense. None of it fit the model. He correctly predicted the arrival of the two assassins. He also correctly predicted the arrival of their comrade. But his models had shown that, by standing out in the open and addressing them, there was an overwhelming likelihood that at least one would emerge and would be immediately struck down by his station sniper. Nothing was truly certain, he knew. Every rule had its exception. Every absolute hid a sliver of doubt. Everything he understood was merely an approximation of something he did not. But the chance of both assassins emerging from this conflict unscathed were, by his calculations, comparable in magnitude to a tornado arranging a deck into a house of cards, then back into the same ordered deck. It was beyond unlikely. It was nothing short of miraculous. Was that what he had witnessed? A miracle of probability? An event as rare and near impossible as the emergence of life itself? He stopped on board the train, providing his ticket. He moved to one of the private rooms, sliding the door aside and taking his seat. As the city began to slip past, he ran through the model for the 24th time, then decided he would simply need to let it go. The sliding door rattled open. A not quite middle-aged man with dark, faintly graying hair stepped in, taking the opposite seat. He casually reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a revolver, aiming it squarely at the accountant's heart. The accountant stared, uncomprehending. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be possible. 2 miracles? In one day? How? He croaked. Calvin reached into his pocket with his other hand, withdrawing a small, unremarkable coin. He perched it on top of his thumb and proceeded to flip it before snatching it out of the air. He then showed it to the accountant. Tails. The gears in his head started to turn. You're good at predicting complicated systems, Calvin said, but only when they behave the way they're supposed to. You can't predict them if all of their decisions are inherently unpredictable. But how did you know I would be? We overheard you say you had a train to catch. There were 2 train stations nearby, so I flipped a coin. The accountant closed his eyes and smiled. How utterly boorish. You got lucky. Yeah, but it worked, didn't it? So it did. His eyes opened, he focused his gaze on Calvin. Well, now you've got me here. What do you want? Calvin laid a piece of paper in front of him and pulled out a pen. He slid them across the table towards the accountant. Names, he said. Locations. All of the rest of them. The accountant sighed. You want me to give up the names and locations of the other overseers? What, you want their PIN numbers too? Calvin tapped the revolver on the table. This probably isn't the time to get smart. The accountant sat back in his chair and loosened his tie. I'm not going to do that. You used a funny trick to put me in a compromising position, and that's clever. But now that we're here, I know exactly how this plays out. Why would I compromise my associates when you're just going to kill me either way? Calvin shrugged. There's a difference between being shot and being dragged behind this train. The other man swallowed. That's barbaric, and either way, it's not particularly likely. We're not too far from our destination, and there will be too many people around. The way I die is at the end of that gun. That doesn't bother you? The accountant rolled his tongue across his teeth. Of course it does. I haven't thought about the idea of dying in such a long time, and to now be sitting here looking at it, it's nothing short of horrifying, but I'm not going to beg for mercy from a terrorist. He leaned forward. Do you truly understand what it is you're doing? Calvin didn't answer. The overseer sighed. Go ahead, we both know what you're going to do next. Calvin squeezed the trigger. Journal entry, the 12th overseer. I don't remember what voice I did for this either, but I'll do a dramatic one or something. The 12th Overseer. Note, 12th is spelled with an F, not a V. Learn something new every day. The 12th Overseer, often called the Accountant, is one of the more interesting personalities on the Council. His position on the Council was previously held by an unnamed individual who died sometime prior to the signing of their contract with death. After their previous O512 died, the position was filled almost immediately, leading some to believe that the previous O512 perhaps didn't die, and more was killed, likely to make room for the current O5's remarkable abilities. O512, named Omar Ulao, in the earliest record I have found, is nothing short of the world's premier mathematical prodigy. He was born in a small village in Uganda, but quickly distinguished himself for his remarkable gifts. It is thought by many of my sources that his ability to mentally perform complex abstract arithmetic is anomalous, and while that is likely a near certainty, there is no definite proof. The overseer was purportedly employed by a small Ugandan accounting firm in his youth, where he quickly gained a reputation for his ability to perform calculations faster than any calculator. How he was approached by the Foundation and what was offered to him is unknown, but the man named Omar died in 1966, and shortly thereafter the new overseer took his seat on the council. What is perhaps most unique about the overseer is his ability to perform the calculations required to accurately predict the outcome of seemingly random probability to a nearly flawless degree. Rumors about that it was this ability that truly led the Foundation to dominance, as he was able to accurately predict, by close observation and analysis of market trends, the rise and fall of powerful nations, as well as the actions of other potentially hostile groups. One source indicated that they believed it was he who had first proposed the creation of the Omega-7 Task Force in order to later discredit General Bow and allow the American to usurp his position on the US government's Security Council. However, calling his ability omniscience is not accurate. While the Overseer can accurately predict the outcome of events that are affected by other events, it is likely that he does not do as well when presented with scenarios that do not have large enough data sets. In other words, he is easily capable of determining the outcome of events with many inputs. He has some trouble with isolated incidents, such as guessing a number one person might be thinking. He's not a mind reader by any stretch of the imagination, even if he does seem like one. As for his behavior, the 12th Overseer is a reclusive individual and does not eagerly seek out gatherings of people, unlike some of his colleagues. I was on an assignment once, undercover at an event where there were several speakers, talking about global market trends and projections. There was one individual I noticed who looked remarkably uncomfortable being there, and as he was not my target, I did not interact with him beyond a friendly smile in passing, but he did not respond. It was not until later that I learned that this man was the accountant. Despite this, he does seem to generally appear in highly populated areas, typically because those areas tend to correspond with active markets such as New York, London, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. Based on my observation, he generally travels with a small group of armed guards, though I have on several occasions witnessed him traveling alone. I can presume that his retinue was not far behind. The accountant will be a devilishly difficult person to corner, and practically impossible once he knows you're looking for him. If he is aware of your intentions, he will quickly disappear, as was the case when I tried trailing him back to his safe house in Berlin. Shortly afterwards, I was pursued by his guards until I was out of the city, and I have not seen the man since. If you choose to try and ascertain the locations or apprehend the accountant, you must take him by surprise. Otherwise, he will not only outthink you, but he will outplay you as well. The Foundation may keep him around, sour personality and all, to move their money around, but he is no less a dangerous individual than anyone else listed in this document. One last thing. Whether it will be helpful or not, one of my sources believes that he sets his entire routine based on local train schedules, as that is his favorite way to travel. Worth considering either way. Okay, so this one was a lot shorter than O513, but I don't want to assume that O511 is going to be shorter. I can take a look at it. Yeah, it looks like this one's a long one. So I think even though this one was shorter than the last one, I'm going to keep to them having one episode apiece because it's easier to keep track of it that way. So, this has been Anashi Sasuke. This was reading 0010512. If you liked it, a like and a subscribe will be groovy. If you didn't, you need to do either one of those things. And I will see y'all in the next one. Later.